Welcome to From Betrayal to Breakthrough. I'm Dr. Debbie Silber, and today's guest is Dr. Sam Shea. And Dr. Sam Shea has walked his own health and addiction journey stemming from a prolonged series of childhood betrayals by his school and community to overcome his 25-year addiction to video games, a 15-year addiction to sugar, as well as overcome his insomnia, gut problems, and a host of other health issues. Dr. Sam Shea now helps those who struggle with addiction, low energy, gut issues, and high stress via his online teleclinic, which individualizes every client with functional nutrition, functional testing, and customized lifestyle plans. Dr. Shea is the creator of the Tame the Beast of Addiction framework, a sugar addiction coach, gaming disorder coach, and gaming disorder ebook author, and creator of the 10 Pillars of Health framework. And when I first asked Dr. Sam Shea to be a guest on the podcast, I invited him because of the great work he's done after healing from his own betrayals and helping others do the same. I had no idea that he was the son of Dr. Jonathan Shea, who was responsible for the discovery of something called moral injury. I remember reading about it during my PhD study, since moral injury is so closely related to betrayal. I feel like I got a double gift, and I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did. Here we go. I am so excited that we have Dr. Sam Shea today. When I asked Sam to be on this podcast, I just knew him for his wonderful work, but it's almost like a double gift, because not only is he going to be sharing what he's up to, but sharing just the incredible work of his father too. So welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie, for having me here. The topic of betrayal is actually a really close theme in not only my life personally, but also in my clinical life. But as you said, it's also generational, because my father's life work has been around PTSD and moral injury.
And for everybody's sake, can you explain what moral injury is? Explain that to us.
Sure. So the background of it, so my father's name is Dr. Jonathan Shea. He's an MD and a PhD, and he's the one who's been credited with the term moral injury. And it's important to understand the difference between PTSD and moral injury, because it relates to betrayal in a very close way. So it's easiest to understand PTSD first and then go to moral injury second. So PTSD is the perpetuation of legitimate survival mechanisms into a non-survival situation. So for like PTSD, it's like you're surviving when people were genuinely trying to hurt you or worse. And PTSD has three main clusters of symptoms, but I mean, we're not going to go into like all the nuances, but this is coming directly from my father's work. The three main clusters for PTSD are hyper-remembering, like remembering this is what mortal danger looks like and you won't forget it. So this is the constant repetition of the dangerous situation. The second cluster is the numbing and withdrawal, which is used as a resource sparing mechanism when you're in mortal danger. So you shut down everything that's not critical so you can have all the reserves you can for your own personal survival. And then the third cluster is hyperarousal, which is when you gather all your resources to meet mortal danger. And the persistence of these three main clusters, hyper-remembering, numbing, withdrawal, and hyperarousal, the persistence of these three after the danger has passed, that's PTSD.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, Sam, I just want to stop you right there, because so often I think we assume that PTSD is sort of reserved for the war vets, you know, like a car backfires and they're reminded of their time in war. Can you share how it can also have to do with betrayal?
Okay, so betrayal is actually, the thing is that PTSD and moral injury, which is more in the realm of betrayal, they frequently go together. So when I describe moral injury, you'll see how PTSD is woven into it. PTSD is not the same thing, but they frequently happen together. So the betrayal piece comes in under moral injury, because actually the definition of moral injury, according to my father, actually contains the word betrayal. In fact, it opens with the word betrayal. So the definition is the betrayal of what's right in a high-stakes situation by someone in real authority. Again, the definition of moral injury is the betrayal of what's right in a high stakes situation by someone in authority. So betrayal is when you have not only it's the loss of trust, where if you're in a situation like, say, a family member, like someone's married and then someone has an affair, that's a betrayal of what's right. What's right is defined culturally, and of what is praiseworthy and what is blameworthy. Like there's not necessarily a universal code of what's right, because it's very culturally defined. And then it fractals down to smaller and smaller units. Like there's the culture, then there's like city culture, and then there's neighborhood, and then there's families, and then there's between individuals, and so on and so forth. But basically culture defines what's right. And then by someone in authority, well, if you're in a relationship and someone has an affair, that person is an authority figure within the context of the relationship. Like at least they have a very real sense of influence over that relationship. So when someone is betrayed in that high stakes situation, like a marriage, by the other person who has authority, then there's a loss of trust. And trust is not when you lose trust, it's not simply left with a vacuum. It's left with it's left with these worse things. Like you've got an active. My father has described it as an expectancy of harm, exploitation, and humiliation. Those are the three things that he uses to describe the void that is filled when trust is betrayed.
And, I just want to stop you there. Think about those words. Could you share those three words again?
Sure.
Because they are so physical.
They're replaced with the active expectancy of harm, exploitation, and or humiliation.
Right.
Harm, exploitation, and humiliation.
That is a powerful punch.
Now, the jargonish term has been paranoia, but that's not an operational definition. It's way more useful to use the term harm, exploitation, and humiliation. And that's what moral injury is. And it's predicated on betrayal. So when people are betrayed, and people who feel betrayed, I can invite all our listeners to do that. Like you take the behaviors, how your behavior has changed since the betrayal, and slot it in, see if those behaviors slot into the expectancy of either harm, exploitation, or humiliation. Like,
let's say, hypervigilance, which is common. Can you explain where that would fit in?
So hypervigilance is, this is where PTSD and moral injury can be have crossover. So hypervigilance is a trait of PTSD, like the common example of a military vet doing perimeter checks around the house, even though they're in a civilian setting. But hypervigilance, that's a form of hypervigilance as it relates to PTSD. Moral injury in hypervigilance is that when you have betrayal, there's an arousal, there's a hyperarousal. So the expectation of harm, exploitation, humiliation, you're going to be more naturally hypervigilant to preemptively prepare oneself for the expectancy of harm or exploitation or humiliation and how to respond to that. Now, we're repeating these words over and over again, but it's necessary because that's the actual operational, that's where it operationally defines in terms of what happens when you're betrayed. So the vigilance is a really understandable mechanism, but it's not of dealing with a betrayal, but it's not the only mechanism. There's actually 4 separate mechanisms when that people use to cope with moral injury. I said cope, not treat, not recover. So,
I'd just like to insert, this could be something like repeatedly checking someone's phone, right? Or finding out where this person is, or just always sort of looking over your shoulder in some way, right? Just to make, because you have that threat, that fear.
Correct. And when people constantly check, you can, for example, the most common example is Facebook stalking your ex. And the fear of being humiliated, of like, oh, now all my friends know that they're now with this other person, or look, they're smiling. They did they did that on purpose. Now all of our common friends know, or you're checking to see if they're telling bad things about me, which is fear of harm, whether it's physical harm or reputational harm. Or exploitation, like are they going to be saying things or trying to manipulate me, or are they going to engage in some sort of narcissistic destructive behavior that's going to cause me a lot of emotional or financial grief or otherwise. And the hypervigilance is one of the behaviors would be constantly checking the signals to it's basically doing reconnaissance. If we're talking about military applications here, you're getting is trying to tap into the sources of recon, even if it's self-destructive, like if it's emotionally self-destructive to do that, like just taking up a lot of resources and occupying your time and certainly stressing you out.
Now you mentioned 4, and I interrupted you. 4.
No, it's fine.
Oh, okay. 4 things that you were going to talk about.
Yeah, the 4. Okay, so now these 4 come from, or 3. Let's say 3 came from my father's work. The 4th is my add-on, which I've discussed with him when I interviewed him, and he was he in principle agreed with it, but he hadn't done any personal study on it. So basically, when someone has moral injury, they have a couple options. One is that they strike first. So I'm sure you've had listeners here who, when they've been betrayed, then they just go on a warpath, even though it may not seem like a warpath, or at least it's a justifiable one.
Mm-hmm.
That's option 1, is to strike first. Option 2 is to hide and to just totally withdraw and try to avoid the limelight, and or just shell up like a turtle.
Mm-hmm.
The third option would be to become a brilliant and fluent liar. Wow. And try to manipulate everyone and everything around you. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at that in the context of betrayal, and the constant active expectancy of harm, exploitation, and humiliation, then lying becomes a useful yet destructive strategy to try to control people around you, to minimize the expectancy of harm, exploitation, humiliation.
Right. You know what's common to all 3 of those? I just get this overwhelming sense of exhaustion. They just seem so exhausting to keep up.
Yes. And this is why you see people develop energy disorders when they're under tremendous amount of moral injury or they're dealing with betrayal. So I see it in practice. So like when I work with people who've got, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis dysfunction, or called HPA axis dysfunction, it's like they're not able to regulate their stress response anymore. And they either feel really jacked up, or they feel really tired all the time, or they have swings of energy up and down. Mm-hmm. So it affects the stress response system. Like it's going to give at some point. And I mean, there's kind of colloquial terms, quote unquote, adrenal fatigue, which has been, I think, better redefined according to literature as HPA axis dysfunction. But you're almost certainly going to be interviewing people who talk about quote adrenal fatigue, and just to contextualize it, as the body's response to stress has become dysfunctional. Mm-hmm. And like I've written about adrenal fatigue and talk about this HPA axis dysfunction, but basically you're dead right. The fatiguing nature usually comes after a state of hypervigilance, and especially if you are becoming a pathological liar in order to control for these 3 expectancies. Mm-hmm. I mean, Mark Twain said it best: tell the truth, there's less to remember.
Right.
It's very, very exhausting to keep up with everything. Now, to give a sense of where my father got all this insight, he is a psychiatrist who is also a military and got involved in the military, but also as a classicist. So he studied Homer's Iliad and Homer's Odyssey. His first book, called Achilles in Vietnam, Combat Trauma and the Trials of Homecoming, is an actual step-by-step, the story of Achilles is actually a step-by-step explanation of how the best quality moral character can have their character wrecked by moral injury. Okay. And then Odysseus in America, his second book, is about how leadership malpractice is the most common cause of betrayal, especially amongst organizations. That the betrayal comes, because that definition of moral injury is the betrayal of what's right in a high-stakes situation by someone in authority.
Right.
It's moral injury, especially in a military or an organizational sense, is leadership malpractice. And Odysseus is one of the best examples in cultural history of the worst possible leader and a pathological liar. Now we see him in the West, and he shows up, all these great adventures. Yeah, he left with 600 men on his ships and came back with one himself, donned no less than a half dozen disguises, and totally narcissistic and a pathological liar.
So this is nothing new.
Nothing new. Homer, my father's conjecture, and is that there was no movies back then, so the great poems were used to transmit information to educate a population that almost everyone was a soldier or is a soldier at some point in their life, on this is how you get screwed up, and this is what bad leaders look like that screw you up and get you killed.
Right. Wow. So tell us the fourth.
The fourth one is, so this is my addition to it, is when you experience moral injury, instead of striking first, hiding, or becoming a brilliant liar, is instead attaching oneself to a person or an organization for protection. So people who have experienced moral injury, leech themselves onto organizations or people where, so this is the risk of people joining totalitarian movements or cults or specific branches of certain religions or whatever it may be, where they feel that I need protection from harm, exploitation, humiliation, so I'm going to subsume myself to this person or organization because they will provide the walls around me.
So this isn't like a support group or to get any sort of confirmation that, yes, this was wrong what was done and we're here to help you. This is for a different reason.
No, this is totally, this is not with the intention of dealing with the issues. It's with the intention of, I am going to merely protect myself under the wing of someone else, as opposed to dealing with the underlying moral injury.
And really, all four of them are the same in that there's no dealing.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. So how does your personal story fit into this?
When I was very young, I was in age 6. My parents actually had a pretty ugly divorce, and what happened was that my parents were so consumed with each other's blaming each other that my needs as a young child weren't fully attended to. So I went to a school where I experienced, and it was a really quote unquote good school, like a really, really quote unquote good school, but I still experienced a lot of physical and verbal and emotional violence in the school. And the betrayal of what's right was that the school itself touted human values and kindness and all the rest of it. So there was a culture, the culture of the school had verbally established that we treat each other nicely. But by the people, and I was betrayal of what's right in a high stakes situation. So I'm the second smallest kid in my class. I'm very kind of frail and flimsy, and I'm scared, and there's bigger boys who are hurting me. And my high stakes situation is like my physical, like I thought I was in mortal danger. So that's the high stakes situation. And then there's the social stakes where I was maligned and as like one of the least popular kids in the school, which sounds pretty kind of petty, 3 decades later. But it hurts, and we're social creatures. And if we feel marginalized socially, we are hardwired genetically as social creatures to feel that that is genuinely life-threatening, because it was life-threatening back, you know, even now. Like if you're socially marginalized, you're in danger, but especially as a hunter-gatherer, you're really in danger if you're marginalized. So social marginalization is genuinely life-threatening, and it's those internal hardwired mechanisms are still triggered that you feel is life-threatening.
Right.
And then
go ahead.
The betrayal of someone in authority. So we have the betrayal of what's right in a high-stakes situation by someone in authority. So who's in authority? The teachers didn't do anything. The principal didn't do anything. The administrators didn't do anything. My parents didn't do anything. And the community, who's like, we were part of a community, and my family knew all the parents of the kids. And so like the parents of those kids. So there's 5 separate people in authority who did nothing.
Now, do you remember, did you share what was going on?
Yes, and I wasn't believed.
Okay. And what sort of response did you get?
The response I got from my father at the time was, you have to learn how to fight your own battles. And it took years for me to clarify where he was coming from that, but he was talking about his own personal experience in school where he was subjected to bullying, and he felt victimized in his own way, and he thought that's what he should have had that mindset then, and he tried to imbue that to me at my age, thinking that was the right thing to do because that's what he needed. But in reality, I needed way more than just a pep talk. I needed the skill sets. I needed martial arts. I needed actual physical support and an intervention. So he was acting from his own projections of what he was dealing with in his past. My mother just flat out didn't believe me, thought I was exaggerating, and actively tried to silence me at dinners when parents tried to ask me what it was, how it was going at school, and I tried to tell the truth. And the conversation was quickly diverted or changed by her. And then the teachers, I have nothing to say about the teachers because I was kicked in the face in class with the teacher present and nothing was done. And that's not the only instance. Nothing was done by the teachers, the administrations, or the principals. So I have no idea what was going through there because they saw it.
So as a young kid, you're experiencing something like this. You go to the people who you just believe will protect you, and you don't feel that protection at all. So what'd you do with all that?
I developed a strong addiction, video games and sugar. And by the way, I just want to contextualize this around my parents. So I mean, right now, like my mother and I have the closest relationship we've ever had. We've talked a lot about what happened in the past. We have a really clear understanding of what happened, where she was at, and she agrees she's made a lot of mistakes, and we're really, really close. And my mother and father are really, really close. Like they're really dear friends now. So I just want to contextualize that since this is a public forum. And like both my mother and father understand the errors that they did, what happened, because they were dealing with the context of their divorce and blaming each other and blah, blah, blah. And so this is what happens when parents get into, accusations of each other, is that the children are frequently caught in the crossfire. And this is why it's so important, if you as a parent feel you've been betrayed by the other parent, for God's sakes, don't weaponize your children against the other parent. For God's sakes. I mean, I'm not swearing, but I would. Don't blinking weaponize your children against the other parent.
Sam, I have to stop you there. That is so huge because you see that all the time.
That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an example. Like the issue of money. I mean, everyone can pretty much relate to that, particularly when there's kids involved in a divorce. Like they wrapped the issue of money around me like barbed wire and started hurling me back and forth at each other around the issue of money, hoping to cut the other. But all that happened is I was the one who got sliced up.
Right.
And it's like, don't weaponize your children, because you're just going to end up with a really traumatized child, which was what happened to me. And so I drowned my misery in a 25-year video game addiction and a 15-year sugar addiction. And other kids, which, I mean, I work with people who are addicted to other things. You know, I chose video games and sugar because those were immediately at hand, literally. And it was a space that was repeatable and really easy to literally plug into. And I felt like I didn't have any social outlets because my quote friends, you know, in that school were not really my friends, particularly when they would turn around the next day and hurt me. So I felt like the only outlets that I had were to escape into video games and sugar.
You could see it where it's like relief and escape.
Yeah. And some, you know, dopamine rush, you know, some feelings of gratification in one's life when school is a war zone and the home is a war zone.
Right. So, and of course, you know, if your parents knew better, they'd do better. We've all heard that. But it took the addiction then. So you went the addiction route. And did you realize when you were in it why you were doing it?
Pretty much, but I didn't know how to get out of it. I mean, except the only thing that I understood as a child was get good grades so I can get out of here. Because I was told the line that if you get really good grades, you can go to a good college and then you'll have a good job and then you'll have a good life. And so the only thing that I had my eye on the ball was just get good grades, numb out whenever there wasn't homework to do, and just keep moving forward so I can get out of here. So that's how I survived. And the thing, and I knew that I was really stressed out. I was abundantly aware of it, but I had no other means as a child that I was aware of that in support for to actually deal with it. I mean, my mom did send me to a psychiatrist, but like my experience was like I would go and I would talk about how hard it was at school, and I would frequently feel worse after the end.
So that didn't help you.
This is one reason I got into mind-body medicine was because I found other techniques that were able to incorporate the body, the physiology, the nutrition, and so forth, and improve my sleep, because I was also a severe insomniac from all of this, to actually deal with the physiological mechanisms to improve my outlook, not just focus on stressful thoughts, which are critical, but there's more to dealing with betrayal than just looking at stressful thoughts, because there's a definite impact on the physical body. That's why I created the frameworks that I did in order to help people, whether they're dealing with something like that's chronically unwell or they're dealing with an addiction. And in almost all addictions I've come across have to do with some facet of moral injury, because they're not able to handle their stressful belief system, their stressful thoughts. And so they get thrown into this cycle that keeps spinning around and round and round. So to deal with moral injury is an actual holistic approach. It's not just dealing with the mind, because the physical body, my father says it best. It's like moral danger is interpreted as physical danger. Moral injury is interpreted by the body as physical attack.
Wow. Okay. So then it's through the body that you need to heal. And Sam, we're going to have to bring you back, but I have to, because I really want to give the listeners just some inspiration and hope. You were able to absolutely heal from these addictions. So can you give us just even the briefest sense of how you did it and what they can look forward to? And if you're okay with it, I would love to have you back to finish up our conversation.
Sure, I'd be happy to come back. So the basic model is called Tame the Beast of Addiction. So BEAST, and I can give links so people can get like a worksheet, and they can download a free worksheet and
sure, go for it.
Go through it all. So the B, all addictions have the same 5 steps. I've created a secular model for addiction that incorporates the best of functional medicine. So B stands for believe a stressful thought. E stands for an emotional physical stress response from that believing that stressful thought. The A in BEAST stands for anesthetize oneself of the stressful emotions that you experienced from believing the stressful thought. The S is smolder in the consequences of the anesthesia you chose. In my case, was sugar and video games. And then T is having terrible thoughts about the consequences. And if you believe those terrible thoughts, then you feel bad and want to numb out, and you have more consequences. You have more terrible thoughts, and if you believe them, then you feel bad and you have more, and you want to numb out, and it goes round and round and round. So believing a stressful thought can be just at the top. He, she hurt me. He, she betrayed me. There's not enough time. There's too much to do. I have to make a decision. The world is unsafe. The world is unfair. He, she doesn't love me. I'm bored. Those are stressful beliefs. Emotion, the E, the emotional physical stress response, can be anxiety, fear, outrage, grief, jealousy, anxiety, worry, etc. The anesthesias, just pick your vice: sugar, video games, alcohol, smoking, work, gambling, Game of Thrones, whatever your gig is. Smolder in the consequences. You can have societal consequences based on your vice of choice, monetary consequences, occupational consequences, legal, domestic, health consequences, relationship consequences. And then the terrible thoughts are different from the original thoughts. It's really important. The terrible thoughts are, I'm no good, I'm a piece of XYZ, I hurt my family, my career, my finances, my reputation, my job, my education. And you can believe those thoughts, and then you can feel bad and numb out and have consequences. So it's really, you have to understand that, or I really want people to understand that the thoughts that initiate the addiction cycle are not the same as the thoughts that perpetuate it. That's really important.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
And the mechanisms to get out of those are, for the belief, you have to have a system that identifies and questions stressful thoughts. So, like, for example, I teach the work of Byron Katie, but there's other techniques out there that help with that. For the emotional physical stress response, you got to increase your resilience, which is where all of functional medicine comes in: sleep, diet, exercise, toxic exposure, routines, gut health, hormone health, adrenals, etc. That's how to increase your resilience, so you're not as vulnerable to reaching for a vice to numb out if you have a stressful thought. If your resilience is high, a stressful belief won't trigger you as much. To deal with the vice itself, you have to learn how you have to remove, replace, and reduce exposure. So knowing the people, places, time of day, and circumstances you're most likely to reach for your vice. For the smolder and your consequences, you have to look at what consequences have been done, and then find the single smallest, easiest, most accomplished next step to reverse the damage from those consequences. And then if people are stuck in the terrible thoughts phase of I'm no good, I'm a piece of XYZ, that's where you have to reach out for help and get help from a clinician or a group or some sort of mechanism or an online course or something to learn the skills of how to deal with and start to reverse the whole cycle as a whole.
Wow. Sam, I'm going to stop you there. I feel like that's just the tip of the iceberg. We have so much to talk about. Will you come back and we can pick this up and make a part 2? Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, tell us where we can find you for now.
Sure. drsamshay.com, drsamshay.com. There, the top of the fold is focused on video game disorder, but you can scroll to have stuff talk about fatigue, my addiction course, learning the work of Byron Katie, fatigue course, and a couple other things as well. But that's the main place to get a hold of me.
Wonderful. Sam, thank you so much. You help so many people with so many things with the little bit you shared, because I know you have a wealth of information, and I just can't wait to have you back. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Debbie.
Wow. Dr. Shay really shed light on the damage that can be done when we're not conscious about how our behaviors impact those around us. We barely scratched the surface during our chat, and he's graciously agreed to come back and share more about what it takes to fully break an addiction, body, mind, and spirit. Dr. Shay has been so kind in offering everyone a discovery call to see if you're a match to his online functional approach. I'll have the link to schedule that in the show notes at pbtinstitute.com/podcast. Here's my biggest takeaway. An unhealed betrayal or injustice can easily turn into an addiction if it's not addressed or healed. These things don't go away unless they're tended to, and when they are, there really is a way to get at it from the roots to heal from it for good. If the pain of betrayal is keeping you sick, sad, and stuck, you may be struggling with post-betrayal syndrome. Take the quiz and see at pbtinstitute.com/quiz. And let us support you. Go to Facebook and join our group, Women Hacking Betrayal, where we give information, tools, and support to help you move forward and heal once and for all. Can't wait to be with you next time, and here's to your breakthrough.